The album's called We Thrive on Big Cities. It's out today, and they're appearing in the Virgin Megastore in Cork at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon before starting a national tour. That starts on Sunday in Limerick, so check local press for details. Director, you guys are great. You're going to go far. Thanks for being on the show. Director. Now, another brief reminder about the Late Late Toy Show, which is now only 8 Fridays away. Send us a videotape or a DVD of your star in the making in action. And we also accept cassettes and CDs and also letters with photographs. Make sure that you keep copies of everything you send us because the material you send in will not be returned. The address, the Late Late Toy Show, P.O. Box 170, RTE, Dublin 4. The closing date is next Friday night, so please get on the case straight away and send your stuff into us. Now, my next guest feels so strongly about the death penalty that he's travelled to Dublin to join the cast of a play called The Exonerated. It's a Dublin Theatre Festival play. It's about, among others, Sunny Jacobs. She was on the radio with me during the week, but she, along with her husband, was wrongly convicted of murder. She spent 15 years in jail, 5 of them on death row, before she was exonerated. Her husband, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. He was executed, horribly as it turned out, in a botched execution in the electric chair. It took them 3 goes to kill him. Will you welcome, please, the man remembered by many as one half of Starsky and Hutch, Mr. David Soul. Hello, David. Good to see you again. Please join us here. Now, you're...
You made it sound like I was the guy who pulled this.
Not quite, but your character is a very interesting character. Maybe we should talk about him first.
Well, first of all, I think I've just become aware of this play. It's been on for a long time. I am definitely a man who stands against the death penalty as any kind of deterrent or any kind of way of changing our lives.
Yeah.
The character I play is another one of the number that have been that have had to sit for 20 years in prison, waiting for someone to do something to contravene.
And this guy, what was his name? Gary
Gauger.
Gauder.
Gauger. Yeah.
Gauger.
Yeah.
Okay, spelled G-A-U-G-E-R.
Yeah.
And he was accused of killing his parents.
Yeah. Actually, it's really funny how they did this. They had some sort of a vision. He had to, if he did it. He said, if I did it, I would certainly want to know I did it. So they put him through a kind of a vision exercise.
Yeah.
Where this guy says, okay, well, I got up in the morning. He got up in the morning. I put my clothes on. Would have probably had to put a knife in he put a knife in his pocket. You know,
okay.
And
this kind of
they
stuff.
took that vision process as a statement of his guilt.
And he'd had a problem with drink, so he was persuaded in a kind of way that were he drunk, he might have had a blackout, and he might have done it while he was drunk.
That's what he thought. He said, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Maybe I had a blackout, and if I did, I should know that I did this to my
But
parents.
no blood on his clothes, nothing.
I think more importantly than the travesty of the justice, I just came from seeing the play tonight for the first time. It's one of the most joyous experiences. It sounds strange to say that.
Sure.
But the spirit, the human spirit that comes through each of these 6 characters who have been condemned to death, whose sentences are eventually exonerated, are commuted. The joy, what they discover about the human spirit within themselves. Yeah. Really uplifting.
Talking to Sunny during the week,
she
said that if she was bitter and twisted, that she could not really have lived.
That's right.
Knowing that her partner, her husband, had actually been
absolutely
executed.
And my character says the same thing. He says, what's the point of killing someone? That's not going to bring my parents back.
No.
It's just not. So I have to learn something from this.
Is the reason you left the United States, I know you still maintain citizenship and you have citizenship in the UK now, was that anything to do with the death penalty and the way American society is?
No, it doesn't. Look, I'm a citizen of the United States, and I'm a citizen of the UK now. My concern aren't about, specific. There's a lot wrong with my country, as much as I love it. But I didn't use that as an excuse to to get out of there because I stepped into just a bigger pile of you know what over there.
Well, you mean you got Bush there and Blair there?
Well,
And...
you got shit both places. You know? And I don't mean that personally, because I think we have to rise above the personalities. I think the things that I'm most concerned about are things that are coming under attack in both countries, and that's our freedoms, what we call our democratic freedoms, the ideals, the principles, the values. Those things are being stripped away little by little.
The Bush supporters and the Blair supporters would say, look, it's not our fault that we are being bombed. It's not our fault that the terrorists are out to get us because they disagree with everything about our way of life. And unfortunately, we have to forfeit some of our freedoms to defend ourselves against this kind of oppression.
Well, that's. I think a lot of people, are getting savvy to that. I think the governments, particularly our own government in the States and perhaps even in trade on fear, that the security issue is a real one. You know, I'm not saying it's not a real one, but when you begin to trade on fear and use fear in this kind of a spin fashion, you can create a possibility to do almost anything.
But you lived, as I did, through the Cold War, when they had, and they still have, massive arsenals pointed at each other. And there was this mad thing, mutually assured destruction. If anyone sent one over, the others would send one back, and we'd all die.
Yeah.
And we kind of managed to live with that accommodation, didn't we?
Yeah.
So it's very different now.
Well, very much different because we don't have any one government or one
common enemy. I
common
suppose.
enemy, do we?
Yeah.
Well, I wish we would fight as strongly to maintain our liberties in the face of all this fear about security as we do to ban smoking. You know, it's, you know, on one hand we're terribly concerned about people's personal behavior now, and much less concerned about things that are sort of eating away our liberties.
You're saying like smoking could kill 60,000 people in Britain every year, probably more than that. But one nuke could kill the population of Manchester.
Well, you know, they've got now in the States they've got no free speech zones.
What's that?
Set up. Well, it's precisely that, because of the fear of security. There's a certain area in Washington, for instance, where you can't say anything bad about the president.
And how do they know?
Well, because it's cordoned off. They'll arrest you.
That's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Why then the decision to live in Britain, though? Was it professional, like the theatre?
It was.
Rather than political or anything else?
Oh, God, yes. Oh, yeah. No, I'm not a political animal. I'm a citizen, so I really care about that. But I don't like taking pot shots at Blair or Bush for the sake of it. But I do care about my citizenship. You know, I went there for the theatre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've done an awful lot of theatre. But having done television and being recognised on every street corner for much of your life...
That's because I stand there and ring a bell.
Well, you started off singing, what were you, The Masked?
I was the covered man.
The Covered Man.
Yeah.
That's how you did your first show busy thing, was it?
Well, it wasn't show busy. I really meant it. I guess, looking back now, it was, you know, that's 40 years ago. Do you realize that?
40 years ago.
40 in 1965,
You were the
66.
Covered Man.
I was the covered man.
And what did you do?
I put a mask on my face because I wanted to be known for my music. I didn't want people to just see, because I was, in those days, I was a pretty boy. Had blue eyes, long blonde hair, and, you know, looked Norwegian and all that kind of stupid stuff. And I didn't want to be known for that. I wanted to be known because I did good music.
That is still your first love, isn't it?
It is.
More than anything else, your music. Because some people thought, wrongly, that it was the success of Starsky and Hutch that led to someone saying, oh yeah, like Telly Savalas and If, let's get a guy who's on the telly to make a record. But that wasn't the way it was. Your music predated your TV success.
It did indeed. There's no question that the popularity of Starsky and Hutch and the sort of international visibility of it helped
make a hit.
Took a record to #1, but it certainly didn't drive me into music.
Yeah. You might have been something else entirely. I mean, your dad is a very interesting character, still living.
Yeah.
Still well.
87 years old.
87 years old. What did he do?
My dad is a history professor, which is probably one of the reasons why I care so much about citizenship and so forth. My dad was a history professor and a pastor, as was both grandfathers. And my sister's a theologian. My brother's a pastor.
And
I
you
made
are
a
the
big
prodigal
mistake.
son.
I really am.
Because your mother and father had a fantastically, and still have, although your mother's very ill, I believe, a fantastically long marriage. How long are they married?
I'm married now 64 years.
Wow, 64
That's
years.
something, man.
And if I may ask you a personal question, what was your longest marriage?
Which one?
That's what I'm wondering. Which one lasted the longest?
I think it was a relationship with a girl that I wasn't married to.
Lasted the longest.
Yeah, 10 years.
But your marriages all were shy of 10 years.
You might say that. You might say that, Pat.
But you've got your children and great relationships with your children, but they're all over there. And
Well,
you're
except
over
for
here.
my daughter China, is now
That's a lovely
has
name.
just come over to. You know, interesting. Like my daughter, when she was born, she was very close to death, and we didn't name her for some reason. She was Baby Soul, and she came through the operation process and was in there with the in the intensive care unit, and we came up with this name, China, because she's as delicate as China, and yet as durable as China. And of course, her mother was half Chinese. So China Soul, and it kind of has
China
a nice ring to
Soul.
it. Yeah.
It's a great name. She's not in showbiz, I presume.
No. She's studying English literature. She's coming over to study in the UK, and she wants to do creative writing. I don't know. She wants to write, so she wants to go out and experience life. Good for her.
Good for her. You, of course, spent some time here, didn't you?
I did back in 1980.
Yeah, and one of your children actually went to school here.
A couple of them did.
A couple of them did.
In fact, they went to school with Ryan Tuberty.
Ryan Tuberty.
Yeah.
They were in his class in school. Very good.
Isn't that weird?
Isn't that weird? It really is weird.
Yeah.
Did they turn out as well as Ryan?
I'm glad to hear you say that, Pat.
I would say that.
No, he's a lovely guy.
Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
When I say that name, what does it mean to you?
Well, it means a lot of things. First, one of the shows that I hate the most on television.
Yeah.
And Jerry Springer the Opera, which is one of the finest pieces of theater that I've ever been involved with.
In which you starred. and was there a lot of hassle about that when that...
Well, you know, I mean, there was a lot of... the BBC came in and videoed the show, and it was put out on BBC Two first of the year, last year.
Yeah.
This year. I'm
And
not
people
sure
were
when.
shocked.
Well, some people were.
Even though it had been packing them in the theatres.
Yeah, it won every award that possible, you know, as one of the finest pieces of theater the National Theatre had ever done. And it takes a real shot at how we, in television, oftentimes use people for our own sake. In other words, and I think that's what Jerry Springer does. I mean,
And did Jerry see the show?
He saw the show.
And
yeah.
what did he think of you as Jerry?
I don't know that he ever saw me except on television. He saw the original one. He said, "I wish I'd thought of the idea." That was his comment.
And starred as himself
Yeah.
in the West End. You were here for the run of The Exonerated. You'll be doing a number of performances. I mean, the way it works is that different well-known people come in and take different parts.
That's right.
And you obviously were anxious to sort of lend your name to this cause.
Well, for several reasons. One, I don't know if you know this, but this Dublin International Theatre Festival, which has been going for 49 years, is one of the most prestigious in the world. I mean, it's big.
Yeah.
So anything that's connected with that festival is something that people take notice of. Secondly, this is an issue that I'm very interested in, concerned about. And thirdly, it's just a brilliant piece of theatre.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You can't have a better combination.
And there's a fourth reason, that Dublin during the Theatre Festival is
Because I knew
fantastic.
you'd be here, Pat.
David, it's great to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
And thank you very much for being with us on the show. David Soul. And if you'd like to see David in The Exonerated, it's going to be running in the Liberty Hall Theatre as part of the Dublin Theatre Festival until October the 14th. That's the end of part one. Back in a couple of minutes with lots more. Don't go away.